Hello, my name is Josh Durrell. I'm the CEO of the Wyoming Business Council, and you are watching What's the Point, where we talk a little bit about economic development in Wyoming and the things that matter to our youth and our state. Today, we're talking with Chris Howler, who is the director for the Center for Principle-Based Leadership and Ethics at the University of Wyoming. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Josh. Glad to be here.
All right. Well, hey, first of all, that is maybe the longest acronym I've ever said. So let's talk about that acronym and what that center means.
Yeah, so our acronym is technically Pebble, and that actually got started from a couple of our colleagues in the College of Business. Just like leadership having a ripple effect when you drop a pebble into a surface of water, leadership also has that ripple effect amongst its followers. So that was where we started the Pebble kind of acronym.
I like it. Okay,
Yeah.
I like that. Okay, that's good. So talk to me a little bit about your path to the center and a little bit about what's going on.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I've been with the University of Wyoming for about a decade. Started out in athletics and kind of worked my way up over there, and then eventually made my way over to the academia side of the University of Wyoming. Started out in the sales center, was the inaugural director of the Center for Professional Selling. And that's where we first met and interacted. And then I took a little bit of a gap year and then came back to the university and helped them start this second center for principle-based leadership and ethics. And it's just been really enjoyable. I love the colleagues that I get to work with every single day. And then more importantly, I love the mission and the things that we're doing through our center. So we have a couple of things that we try to strive for, kind of our mission statements, our goals. One is to educate students, to give them the tools to make principled decisions and also be an ethical leader. So we have a leadership minor, and we're launching a leadership major as well in the fall of 2025. We also do a lot of activities that are based kind of in that giving students an opportunity to test out those leadership and ethics skills, which is very easy, right? You gotta have some opportunities to test that out before you get to the real world. So that's events, things that we put on through our center that are just opportunities for them to get outside the classroom and kind of those extracurricular activities. And then the third thing that we do is we really try to instill this courage and leadership across the state of Wyoming through our executive education. And so one thing that we've developed in our center is these workshops, these sessions that are for professionals across the state of Wyoming to really hone in their ethical leadership skills as well, and become a leader that can really instill change. And so I think what summarizes all of the activities that our center is doing is our higher purpose statement, which is building principled leaders for a better tomorrow.
Nice. Okay. I like that. I like that a lot. So are you across the entire campus, or is it specific to the College of Business, or how does this work?
Yeah, great question. So our leadership minor is technically interdisciplinary, so it's open to all students across campus, which is really fun because we actually get to interact with a lot of different students and not just the College of Business students, which really just adds a lot of diversity of thought. And so that piece is open to all students, as are our activities and the events that we do. Because we don't want it just strictly to be at the College of Business. We are housed within the College of Business. That's where our center is at, in the Department of Management and Marketing. But it really, truly is open to all students on campus.
Great, great. So in terms of leadership, what are some of the things that you walked in initially and thought, hey, we've really got to work on this or that? What were some of the big things that jumped out to you?
Yeah. So we've been truly blessed to have the Daniels Fund endowment as part of our college. So we've had a Daniels Fund chair for a number of years. Currently, it's Kent Noble, who does a phenomenal job in that role. And then we also brought in Chase Teal, who has been just a great thought leader in the space of ethics and really instilled a lot of our curriculum and a lot of the kind of programming that we do. He's been kind of the architect behind the scenes that's really developed a lot of that. But I think for us, the challenge is, especially in a polarized world today, students are going to be faced with really difficult decisions, whether it's in college or whether it's in their first professional career, or whether it's they grow a family and really have to kind of manage that work-life balance, and then face with these difficult decisions in their life. And so our whole goal at the center is to give these students the opportunity to really develop a personal code of ethics for themselves, and build these principles, these value systems that can guide their decisions. And ultimately, when they're faced with a really difficult decision, they have that core that they can lean on. And we think that a leader, to truly be a great leader, has to first know how to lead themselves. Okay. Then they can develop how to lead others, and then ultimately they can lead an organization. And so we use that same framework in our executive education curriculum as we do for our undergraduate students here at the University of Wyoming. But I think that is the biggest thing that we can do, is just provide these students an opportunity to be an ethical leader that not only can influence others, but can build trust, be transparent, and really just be somebody that others want to lead and follow.
Okay. And so this is a class as well as an academy. We're going to talk about the academy a little more later, but tell me a little bit about the class and kind of what that's like, and how it's maybe different than a normal class that a student might have.
Oh yeah. The first thing we realize is teaching leadership is really hard, right? Because it's so practical, and we can research and understand theories that are out there, and even when you look at leadership theory, there's a lot of stuff that just isn't. It's hard to really back the research behind it. And so the leadership theories have changed so much over the past 100 years that it seems about every decade there's a new kind of fancy leadership style that's out there. And I think ultimately what you have to realize as a leader is that the situations are going to really dictate how you react in those situations to best lead your team or yourself. And so what we have is we have three main courses that are part of that minor and major. The first is principle-based ethics, which really kind of dives into this ethical dilemma out there. How do you define yourself as a leader, and really give those students opportunities to just start challenging some of that thought. And maybe it's, how did you grow up? What were the principles that were instilled in you? And now you're in college and you're starting to think through, okay, what is my value system? So they really dig into that in the first class. The second class is a little more where we start to really research these different leadership styles and theories and practices out there. That one's called the Foundations of Leadership course. And that's where they start to actually get to test it out a little bit. And so we always try to work with an external partner in our classroom. We give them kind of live role plays and things where they can actually test out those leadership skills in different situations, and a lot of case studies as well. And then the final course is called Leadership in Practice. And that is our capstone course. It's based to be it was made to be a seminar course that really is that opportunity where students aren't reading through a textbook and taking quizzes and tests. They're actually applying the skills that they've learned through the curriculum. And we've had some great partnerships in the past. We've worked with the Better Business Bureau of Northern Colorado and Wyoming to actually help nonprofit organizations in our community become Better Business Bureau accredited. And it's also a 2-for-1 because of Spark Tank, which is a huge project and an amazing event that we host, and kind of a year-long program that we do in our center as well. Part of the criteria for those organizations to apply for those funds is they have to be BB accredited. Okay. And so it was kind of a nice 2-for-1. And it's just really been a great opportunity for students to actually get out there and see the work come to life. Right. And I think that's been what we ultimately want, is these students to be challenged to practice these skills and reflect back on what they've learned in their undergraduate, so they're not going, man, that class, I didn't get anything out of that class, so I'm not ever going to use that in my career, right? We've heard that before from some of our students. Our hope is that they actually can take something from these courses and apply it to their life.
Right. So tell me a little bit about the difference. So you said you do executive, you'll do like executive coaching or executive seminars with businesses as well as students in the classroom. So you've got those two different worlds. Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about the differences there. Yeah. I'm kind of excited to hear like the things that you run into.
No, for sure. I think the main difference that we've kind of coined is when you're teaching undergraduate students, you're kind of the sage on the stage. So you have a little bit, you're a little wiser, older than these individuals, and you're helping them along, and you're kind of looked at as the expert. Right. When we go to the executive education side, we're more of a guide on the side. Okay. And so we really try to help them understand some of the principles, maybe the new kind of theories that are out there, and some of the application materials, because not everybody has formal training to be a leader. Yeah. Most cases they don't. Most cases, individuals that are in kind of those mid-level manager positions are promoted because of their individual skills that they have, but they've never actually led a team before. Right. So our goal with the executive education is to give them those tools and skills, but in a lot of ways workshop it, right? So they probably know a lot of the answers to the questions we're going to pose to them, or some of the tools that we're trying to train in that executive education sessions. But we're just trying to help facilitate them so that they can actually understand it, apply it, and go out there and do it in their real jobs.
In their real jobs. So you're putting them in the situation so that they kind of have to use it, reflect on it, and go, okay, that didn't go so well. Here's how I'll do it next time, or whatever.
Yeah. Or they may have learned or heard about it or listened to a podcast, and maybe it was there for a little bit and then it kind of just dissipated,
right.
or maybe that won't work until they actually have tried it. And so I think ultimately it's giving them confidence that they can be a leader. Anybody can be a leader given the right tools and circumstances. And I think it's instilling that courage in them that they can really make a change in their organization, and then have that ripple effect to make change for the state of Wyoming.
Yeah. So here's something that I've been thinking about a lot, is this idea of how do you sort of get people to collaborate as leaders and work together with a team and realize that maybe leadership isn't necessarily a title. Leadership is something that you do, or that you create followers, you know, and people work together on that. How do you put that into practice?
This is the classic leadership versus management theory, right? Or kind of understanding. And I have a nice definition I like to give leadership, is that it is a process of influencing others for a common good. And I think there has to be that common good piece, because you can go down a rabbit hole of who's a good leader and who's not a good leader if you don't kind of have that ethical, moral background to give you some kind of guardrails on what is a good leader.
Right.
But I think for us, it really is working with these individuals and showing them the capabilities that they probably already have, giving them the tools to start to strengthen that ethical leadership muscle, and start practicing that. And I think for us, we feel as a center, if we can help individuals across the state become better leaders, it's going to have a trickle-down effect. And so they're going to create cultures that individuals want to work at. They want to stay because they see value in staying at their organization and eventually moving up themselves into a leadership position. And then we also want to instill this opportunity for our graduate students to stay in the state of Wyoming because there's such a strong leadership culture, that it's not only being successful. Yes, dollar signs and budget and the bottom line is important, but I think most importantly is caring about others and making this state a better place that is desirable, and that we want individuals to stay here and truly be a part of this overarching change, which I think is a lot of what you're trying to do at the Business Council as well.
Absolutely. And so as you look at students and they come into the class, they probably have some sort of preconceived notion of what it's going to be like. How do you kind of, get to like break down what they maybe have thought before about management, and then build them back up into this idea of kind of influencing others for the common good?
Yeah, I think I think everybody. The first question I ask is, describe if you've had a good leader or a bad leader. Or I think I asked them originally is what does leadership mean to you? And a lot of them go quickly to, well, I've had a bad leader, and so I want to be a better leader because I don't want to do what they did. And I think it's this understanding that it's hard to lead others. You're usually on an island most times. And what we tell people is that the 90-10 decisions don't make it to your desk. It's usually the 51-49 decisions. And so, just because you're in a title of a leadership position and maybe you have direct reports doesn't necessarily equate to you being a good leader. And so I think we kind of have to break that down and really tell them that just because you're moving up the corporate ladder doesn't mean you're actually becoming a better leader in some situations. It really is about self-awareness, self-development, and understanding that there's always room for improvement. And truly, I think, we look at our historic, really great leaders that have changed so much in our world. You think of Dr. Martin Luther King or Nelson Mandela. You think of some of those leaders, and it's like at their core, they were driven by caring for others and trying to truly make impactful change instead of just the fancy titles at the end of at your name and the fancy salaries. And I think that's what we're trying to showcase to these students is, if you don't care about your mission, your vision, your values, and others, it's going to be really hard to move up and get everybody else to follow you through that change.
So you're taking them through a process where they sort of understand their own value system, understand the things that are important to them, and then giving them opportunities to sort of match that up with the mission of an organization, or realize that without those two things working together, you're probably not going to be as effective as when they do.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah. So I think you're alluding to culture, and so ultimately we challenge our students when they go on job interviews. Try to figure out what that organization is like, and what's the culture there. Notice how the employees treat you when you walk in, or how the interviewee is talking about the organization or the company. And so I think we really try to challenge our students that life's pretty short. And if you don't enjoy what you're doing and feel like you're making a difference, it can be really hard, and it can be a kind of a not a purposeful life. Right. And I think that's hard to tell a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old, because they got the whole world in front of them, and they just want to go be the next CEO of Apple. But I think what we're trying to instill in them is if you build these muscles now on how to make these ethical decisions, you can actually have a tremendously larger impact as a leader that can instill change in your followers, in your organization, that are really just hard to quantify because of the ripple effects that it's having.
Right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that's all like kind of individual level and then organization level.
Yeah.
And then, as you mentioned, one of the things that we're trying to do at the Business Council is sort of taking a state level view of the business community, of our communities as a whole, and trying to figure out how do we create change at that level. So I think what you're talking about is that self-leadership, that leadership of a team, leadership of an organization, and then leadership of a community, and how does all that stuff work together? And you said something earlier that I thought was really cool. You said, what we want people to do is to realize that they're like in an environment of leadership, and that's attractive.
Yeah.
Because the reality is that we lose about 2/3 of the people who are born in Wyoming leave to another state. And some people will say, well, people do leave all the states, so we're not alone. And actually, that's not true. We are near the worst. Yeah. Or wait, maybe we're the best at losing people.
There you go.
Right?
There you
so
go.
we'll frame it in a positive, I guess.
Yeah.
And we fight West Virginia for the top spot. And so many states don't have that experience. And what we're trying to do is trying to say, how do we turn that tide? Because at the Business Council, we talk to a lot of people about what they want the future of Wyoming to be. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what part of the political spectrum you're on. It doesn't matter if you're in a small town or a big town. It doesn't really matter what profession you're in or anything. People want opportunities for their children. Yeah. And so tell me a little bit about the academy, because as I watched it from the outside, and then I had a little bit of insider info on it. It really opened my eyes to what it was doing for students and the opportunities that lay in front of them in Wyoming. Yeah. So to first start out with what the academy is, and then let's talk a little bit more about kind of how it might be introducing students to the cool things that are in Wyoming. Yeah,
no, for sure. I mean, what an amazing experience. I think that's what's been part of why I enjoy working at the University of Wyoming so much, is because I've had an opportunity just to create things that I think can have a lasting impact on our students here. And so one of those is the UW Leadership Academy, which you alluded to. And you were a big part. We went back and forth on some of your thoughts of how to create.
Coffee.
Yeah, there we go. We drank some coffee. And the other best thing we did was partner with Leadership Wyoming and Mandy Fable, who has just done a phenomenal job with that program. But I'll take one step back. So we have an amazing supporter of our center in Greg Dykeman, and he gave us an amazing gift to kind of start the wheels on creating this leadership academy. And so he was kind of our pivotal kind of influencer that got this thing started. And so we went to the whiteboard and started thinking, okay, how could we create an experience for students at the University of Wyoming to not only learn about the state of Wyoming, to learn about the importance of economic development, and probably most importantly, develop themselves as leaders across the state through these experiences and the curriculum that we're having them kind of work through as part of this class. And so the goal behind that was we created kind of a mini version of Leadership Wyoming for undergraduate students here at the University of Wyoming. And so throughout the semester, we hosted in the fall semester. We have a pretty rigorous application period in the spring, which has actually just started, where they have to officially apply. They have to send in a resume, a letter of recommendation, and then we've added they have to actually record a video of themselves talking about why leadership is important to them and why they want to grow as a leader, specifically in the state of Wyoming. And so what we have them do is we have them work through kind of leadership curriculum, but then we take them to different areas across the state of Wyoming, and we focus on 6 main areas. So we focus on outdoor recreation, tourism, manufacturing and community services or nonprofit organizations, energy, and then education. And so those are our 6 areas that they have to really dive into in kind of a really short amount of time. And while they're doing that, they're learning from leaders across the state. They're hearing from business owners. We're taking them on tours, and they're really getting to see all the opportunities out there in the state of Wyoming for them. And then they come back and they actually present out on one area that they kind of found that, okay, this is a problem that is really causing some issues in this specific industry or area for the state. And then they have to give kind of their solution to that problem. And that's kind of the overarching kind of, they're working through that the entire semester while they're in the academy.
Okay, so you're providing them with a sort of a framework on how to solve problems.
Yeah.
You're providing them an opportunity to dig deep into a particular problem, because they don't all work on all 6.
No,
right?
yeah, kind of split into groups.
So they split into groups and dive deep as they can into a particular problem, and then they work through after going to, you go to 3 different places around the state. Three different communities, and then they get a chance to talk with business leaders, they get to talk to community leaders, they get to understand what's really happening on the ground, and then propose solutions, right? And sort of say, here's what we think maybe could be done to fix a problem in the state. What was, as you sort of looked at the process of that, because this happened one time, what do you think?
A lot of knowledge.
What did you learn about that process?
And we kind of try to focus everything in this idea of systems leadership, which is this idea of all of these moving parts when you're faced with these decisions as a leader and they affect so many other individuals, kind of the problem you have at the Business Council for the state of Wyoming. I think for us, it just showed that we have a lot of really smart individuals across the state of Wyoming that are really trying to do some good. And I think you had mentioned something earlier where, if you asked everyone what they think would actually instill change in the state of Wyoming, I'm sure that the answer for that spectrum was pretty wide. Right. But I do think that people care about this state and they want to make it better. And unfortunately, change is very hard. It's very difficult. It takes a lot of time. But I think what I learned was that there's a lot of really smart people out there that are trying to do this. And we have an amazing resource as well in these undergraduate students. Right. And so I think for us, one of the purposes for the UW Leadership Academy is to show them the opportunity that they can have and be a part of if they want to be here and stay in the state of Wyoming. And we even encourage our students, if you want to go outside and explore and either go, throughout the United States or even go internationally, that's great. But come back and bring that experience to us. And when you're ready to, put your roots down and make this amazing state that is just given so much to, I think, so many people, they can be a part of that solution as well. And so seeing that it takes a village to really instill that change, and just learn of all the amazing things that are going on in our state of Wyoming, that's what I personally took back. And I think our students really enjoyed being a part of that and walked away with probably one of those experiences that could really change their life.
Well, I can't speak for all the students, but I know one of them for sure had that experience. So how many students is it?
Yeah, so we have 20 students that compete, or not compete, but are in part of the academy. They compete to get in the academy through the application process. But we have it set so they have to be an undergraduate student. We were very purposeful in that. So they can actually apply after their freshman year. So they can be a sophomore, junior, or going into their senior year. They just have to have eligibility in the fall semester. But then we had, I believe, 8 or 9 different colleges were represented in that first class, which was amazing because we were trying to have this ripple effect within the university. And it when you get students that are just so excited to want to grow and be leaders, and you see these resumes and you're like, man, if I was doing half of what you were doing when I was an undergraduate student, I'd be maybe a lot further down in my life, but I think it was just so cool, and really just an amazing experience to not only help lead and direct them, but to be a part and to get to know them, and just see how how much they value this state of Wyoming and really want to be a part of this growth.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So you're collecting applications right now.
Yep.
And then you'll kind of go through this application process, and then that'll be a class for 20 individuals again.
Yeah.
Your goal is to try to continue to make it broad throughout the University of Wyoming, right? So that maybe all the colleges are represented at some level. So that's which is awesome, because I think that those kinds of opportunities are really important, because a lot of times our students don't know what's happening in other parts of the state. I think a lot of our students might know somebody from another town. They might have gone and played sports in another town. So they've seen a court or they've seen a field, but they don't necessarily kind of know what's happening. So I think that that's really critical. And to kind of chunk away at 20 at a time is actually, it's a really good thing.
Yeah.
So let's flip it and talk a little bit about the kind of the corporate engagement, or the businesses in those communities, and how they've engaged in not only the academy, but also with Pebble.
Yeah, no. And then one other thing, we did have about half the students were actually not from the state of Wyoming, which added just another layer that was so beneficial in their growth and development. Because even the ones that were from the state of Wyoming, that you, like you said, hadn't maybe traveled much, you have some individuals that had never really gone outside of Laramie before. And I think that was really cool for them to be part of that group as well. And maybe we'll get a couple of them to think as special and fondly of Wyoming as we do. But I think, the corporate engagement piece, the University of Wyoming, be the only four-year university in the state of Wyoming, the support and just the impact that we have had from corporate partners across the state, and even some of the surrounding kind of regional areas, is just so beneficial to our growth. Having that insider kind of, we're actually, we're in the real world kind of doing these things and tactics and learning. And then when we can bring them into our classrooms, whether they're guest speakers, and they can provide some of that insight, I think it is just so helpful. But then also when they can partner with us on these amazing kind of initiatives like the UW Leadership Academy, or when we can give back to them through kind of our executive education curriculum, it's just so helpful. And I think you see and you hear when they're talking with these students, and I think it really instilled some hope back into them. Sometimes, unfortunately, the University of Wyoming gets bad press, and I think they lose faith in our younger generation, which is just natural, right? Whatever the new generation is, they don't know any better, right? They haven't walked in my footsteps. But I think for them to see the potential, the opportunity that some of these students have to really instill some of that change is pretty amazing for them to see. But then them just giving the time, these corporate partners that are so beneficial to all of our programs in college business, but for them to give us time to go on these business tours, to come speak. They're very busy individuals, but the fact that they want to come be a part of this programming that we're doing, I think just is another amazing, just when it takes a village to create that growth, that leadership change, we really do have that here at the state of Wyoming.
Well, that's workforce is a challenge, and everybody says, "Oh, workforce is a challenge for Wyoming." Workforce is a challenge for everyone.
Oh,
and people have been competing for talent forever, and so our businesses, I think now with some of these connections, that adds to it helps their businesses, right? It allows them to see what's going on. It allows them to kind of broaden their horizon and to see what potential is here, and to see what is possible for them in the coming years. And I do think that when you have a vibrant business community, your community as a whole is just stronger. And I think that's one of the things that I see this doing, because again, there's no one thing that's going to fix the challenges that Wyoming's economy faces. There are going to have to be a lot of these small efforts that add up to big changes. And I see that connection between the business community and the students of UW, because you just said it, that people sort of sometimes think, oh, these young kids, and they're just attached to their phones and everything like that, and all this sort of like look for the negative.
Yeah.
But when you actually get to connect with students and see what they're thinking about, see the skills that they have, and try to see the world through their eyes, it's pretty incredible. And you sort of have that moment where you're like, gosh, I wish I would have been like this at 20. A game changer. And so I do think it's definitely a two-way street that this is enabling, and I think that's a big key to community resilience in the future.
Oh yeah, yeah, and we spend a little time talking about that in our leadership curriculum, but just these different generations and the way they're motivated, the way they're driven, even just some of the thoughts that they have about the other generations.
Sure.
But yeah, I think just having an open mind and really having a desire to want to grow from others, no matter who that is. I think we can learn from CEOs all the way down to a college student that has a unique experience. And really, sometimes I think when we can get out of our own way and allow for them to just open our mind, maybe sometimes to some thoughts that we hadn't originally thought about. And so I think we try to instill that, and I just also personally have grown so much from just being a part of these students and the curriculum that we're doing. I think for me, I had a mentor when I was an undergraduate student that really just instilled a lot of hope and challenged me and motivated me. And I hope that, I'm also becoming that for our students as well. I may not know everything, but I'm going to be your biggest supporter and encourage you to just go out there and try some of these different challenging things, such as apply for an academy where it's like, man, I don't know any of the other students, what it's going to be like, especially with the inaugural class. But I think when they walked away from that, man, the experience that they were able to take away and now apply to their future career is something that they're going to always think about. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So you've been around the University of Wyoming for about a decade.
Yeah.
And so you've been able to kind of come in contact with the younger generations, regardless of when that might have been.
Yeah.
It continues to change. And I have this idea about this generational differences that people always talk about, because I think what I've seen is that by and large, people want to be successful.
Oh, yeah.
They want to progressively realize a worthy ideal. Okay, so that's what I've generally seen. But the external factors that play into that success have changed over time. So I sometimes wonder, we sort of say, well, this generation or that generation and so on and so forth. It's like the core wanting to make a difference, wanting to be successful, it's always there. It's just that the environment around us has changed. And I think sometimes we forget that people are like that. I mean, are you seeing that same kind of thing?
And because a lot of what is instilled in them is their childhood. When you think about these generation, how they're going to work, how they're going to perform, or how they define success, is really part of that environmental factor. And I think, you look at the last 100 years and you see the change that our country and the world has had, and no wonder we're going to act differently than maybe our grandparents or even our parents. And so I think that's something that people, quickly forget. And a lot of judgmental thoughts are just based on maybe some of those stereotypes.
Right.
And I think, it's breaking down some of those barriers, being open to understand that just because somebody doesn't maybe think or act the same way doesn't mean that they can't help be a part of a solution or a successful team. They may just go about it a different way than me or you would. And I think, so I think that just breaking down some of those barriers so that they can understand and define what does that success look like to them, and then helping and encouraging them to get there for the common good, for the common team.
Yeah, and I bet you see that a lot with the academy, because you have students from different colleges with different ways of seeing a problem. And then we know that diverse teams make the best outcomes. Right? Like that's just the way it works, and especially if they're facilitated well. So do you have to? What's that like? Those teams?
It's fun. You get your engineering students mixing with your college of business, your ag, arts and sciences. And I think it's really fun though, because, I'm around the majority of college of business students in a lot of our programming. Luckily with our leadership minor, we do touch some other individuals, but it is funny. You got your business minded student that's, all right, let's get the SWOT analysis out and get the spreadsheets. or the engineer wants to really think like, okay, let's break this down to the meticulous, how's this made, to where you get some individuals, that are, maybe psychology, that are really just thinking, okay, like what's the human behavior impact of this? And so I think it strengthens the academy by having these individuals. And I think in all of my roles here at the University of Wyoming, I've been a big, instigator, maybe not the right word, but really enjoy building partnerships across the campus.
Right.
And so I really like building programs that affect all of campus, or at least have the opportunity to bring those students from all those different colleges, and really just, the more people that you can have that don't think like you, the stronger your team is going to be. And I think we've done that and want to continue doing that with the UW Leadership Academy.
Great. So, Chris, what I can tell you is that from this seat, it doesn't sound like you have a lot of enthusiasm toward any of this stuff. And it doesn't sound like you're very hopeful at all.
Yeah.
So
Maybe,
here's what's inspiring about this talk to me is that there's a lot of enthusiasm for leadership. Yeah. There is a lot of energy that's being put into making the circle bigger, and not just saying we're going to take this group of students that we know well at the College of Business, and we're going to take them and we're going to make them into something. Yeah. You really try to make the circle bigger, and you've actually tried to make the circle like statewide. You're really trying to make it so that people across the state can be involved in leadership and mentorship, and learn and grow together, and do it in a way that sort of says, hey, let's do something that makes Wyoming different. Let's do something that exposes the folks in the business community and the folks at the university and students all to the same kinds of things, so that we can all grow. Yeah. And to me, like, that is a way that we're going to continue to be strong. Is to have that, and like you said, kind of build those muscles now, because we do see that it's a challenge, and as people continue to grow, they tend to get better at leadership, hopefully. But you have to focus on it, and you have to be willing to take some risks, and to step out there. And I think that what you're creating here, and with the center and your supporters, as well as the folks that you're surrounding yourself with, it's going to make a big difference. And I just appreciate the time that we've spent today, but also in the time we've spent over the last few years getting to know each other and developing what I think is really, it's monumental in the state to be able to do this. And so thanks for the work that you're doing, and thanks for the time today.
I think, just my lasting thought is a small impact is really hard to determine in this exact moment. But I think when you think about, and this all comes back to that first, right, the ripple effect that we want to have on Pebble, ripples can have a huge effect as they grow over time. And so if we can make just a small impact, right, if we can even have an academy and we only, get one student to think about making change in the state of Wyoming, that's worth it. I think ultimately those little tokens, right, we're always kind of just adding a little bit here and there, and then it can have a huge impact for our state of Wyoming to have some of that growth that we've been talking about. And so, just thank you so much for having me. Excited to be on this podcast, and love the work that you're doing over at the Business Council, and just have really enjoyed our partnership and friendship as we continue just to make change across the state.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.